a lot of comments too.
I was about to say that. I think it's pretty clear from all the comments that you just read, not one was on his side. Not one is saying, this guy should get another trial. He's not guilty. He's innocent. It tells you how pervasive the prejudgment was in this case. And they may have a pretty decent argument as far as the publicity in this case, all the negative publicity. And again, I would hope that the judge sees the kind of case it is. I mean, eventually, at the end, he was the alleged victim. So
Right.
Mostly it's him who's being harmed, and some restitution.
Maybe the judge should use our comments in their motion. Thank you, Lala Uredzian, for being with me tonight. Coming up next, though, closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. Don't go anywhere here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
So I take it you'd recommend leaf filter?
Absolutely. All my neighbors already know.
Go to getleaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate. Act now and save 15% off your purchase.
In Ocilla, Georgia, former beauty queen and teacher Tara Grinstead went missing in 2005. She has never been found, but now one of her former students has been charged with her murder. Tonight, a preview of this week's crucial hearing on Court TV.
He said that he knew who had killed Tara Grinstead, and I said, who? And he said, your brother.
In Santa Fe County, New Mexico, actor Alec Baldwin speaks out about the civil lawsuits connected to his fatal shooting of Helena Hutchins.
Well, why sue people if you're not going to get money? That's what you're doing it for.
On the docket tonight, the Parkland school shooter preparing for trial in Florida. He has already admitted to murdering 17 people and attempting to murder 17 others. So the jury will only have one decision to make: life or death.
I believe it's your decision to decide where I go and whether I live or die. Not the jury's. I believe it's your decision. I'm sorry.
Plus, convicted sex offender and former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein caught in jail with contraband. Not a knife, not drugs, but milk duds. Tonight's 13th juror question: how do you think Weinstein smuggled the milk duds into his cell? Did he get help from the outside? Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And as I've told you many times, almost every night, I'm a former prosecutor. That's the way I see the world. But it's also one of the things I draw upon when I analyze the cases and the stories, investigations, and trials that we cover here on Court TV. And one problem that prosecutors often have is when we, right, as the former prosecutor, try a case, a lot of the witnesses who have information that's going to help me prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt are not the pillars of the community, okay? It's not like you necessarily get to pick who your witnesses are, who were at the scene of a murder, or who helped the suspect get rid of the body, or who provided the murder weapon, all of that stuff. What happens in many cases is that my witnesses as a prosecutor aren't associated with me personally, they're associated with the defendant. And as we know, the defendant is accused of being a criminal. And that's a problem that we have case after case, because what the defendant's attorney will do is attack my witnesses like I picked them, like they're my friends, or like I hired them or something. No, these are all his friends and his associates and people that he got involved with. And oftentimes you got to remind the jury of that, because the witnesses involved in murder cases, as I said, they're not the pillars of the community. These are people who have been associating with the person I believe is a criminal. Case in point, Tara Grinstead disappeared 2005. Her body's never been found. This is going to be a murder trial against a man named Ryan Duke. But in the middle of all this is his former friend, Bo Dukes, who has all the information. But Bo Dukes isn't a great guy. Trust me, he's not a good guy. But he's the one that Ryan Duke was associating with, and he's the one that the prosecution is going to rely upon, and it could be a problem in trying to prove this case. For those of you not familiar with the disappearance of Tara Grinstead, Chanley Painter has more for us tonight.
High school
teacher Tara Faye Grinstead vanished from her Georgia home in October of 2005.
The scene in Tara's house was ambiguous to us. We did not know if a struggle had occurred there or not.
The popular educator, also a former beauty pageant contestant, lived alone in the town of Osceola, about 200 miles south of Atlanta. Her disappearance alarmed friends and baffled investigators.
We needed more information because we had a situation in which many people had been in the residence that day, and also several persons had been in the residence before law enforcement arrived.
The search for clues into Tara Grinstead's whereabouts would last for more than a decade. A billboard with her photo and tip line number loomed for years in the area, along with hopes she would be found. Hundreds of people were interviewed, but leads dried up and the case went cold.
You're convinced you will find her?
I am convinced we will, one way or the other. Then, in February 2017, more than 10 years after the 30-year-old disappeared, police arrested Ryan Duke and charged him with burglary, aggravated assault, murder, and concealment of a body. Not long after Ryan's arrest, police brought charges against his friend, Bo Dukes. The two were former students at the high school where Grinstead taught. They were part of the graduating class of 2002. Their names were similar but spelled differently. It was more than their names that bonded them together. Ryan and Bo shared a secret, and Bo kept that secret for years until he told it to Ryan's brother at a party.
He said that he knew who had killed Tara Grinstead, and I said, who? And he said, your brother.
That is Stephen Duke, Ryan's brother, testifying at the trial of Bo Dukes in 2019.
I asked him, kind of shocked, what do you mean? And he said, your brother killed her. I said, are you serious? He said, no, I'm just playing. Don't tell anybody.
But Bo wasn't joking when he confessed to investigators that Ryan allegedly told him he broke into Grinstead's home to rob her for drug money, but ended up strangling her. Grinstead's body has never been recovered, but Bo's confession helped crack the case. Bo said he helped Ryan move Grinstead's body from a large pecan orchard where Duke had dumped the body to a nearby pine grove. Bo then assisted Ryan in burning the body. Bo was convicted for his role in the crime. The jury found him guilty of concealing Grinstead's death and lying to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. He was sentenced to serve 25 years in prison. It's not clear if he will turn state's evidence against his friend Ryan when he's tried for Grinstead's murder. Ryan has pled not guilty and maintains his innocence.
So there you see the problem, right? Bo Dukes would be a great witness for the prosecution, but a really bad witness for the prosecution. What's his role going to be in the case against Ryan Duke? Well, there's a huge hearing that's going to be on Court TV this week. And guess who's there? Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae is in Osceola, Georgia tonight. Julia, great to see you. Bo Dukes is going to testify at this hearing. What's going on? Who's calling him? What's the issue? And is this all about whether or not he's going to testify at the trial?
Vinnie, what we know is that he is being transferred from a state prison that's about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from here to be here and actually take the witness stand. But we don't know which side is going to call him. We know that there are several motions that relate to not only his statements to police, but the testimony that he may give, what the defense may or may not cross-examine him with, several things that could come up. But we will be hearing from someone that we know the state is looking to call during the trial as one of their key witnesses. Now, they're not just going to be relying, though, on what Bo Duke says. Once they get in front of the jury, they will be trying to corroborate what he says on the stand with other people that he told things to throughout this many-year span of them not knowing what happened to Tara Grinstead, in this case essentially being cold. One of those, his ex-girlfriend, Brooke Sheridan, who had this to say during his 2019 trial.
So what occurs on January 10th of 2017 that you learned that your boyfriend, in fact, had helped dispose of her body?
I don't recall the exact events that led up to it,
Yes, ma'am.
but I do know that he had a severe panic attack. And he, after I got him calm, I told him that he needed to tell me what was going on, and he proceeded to tell me what had happened.
Okay. What did he tell you?
He told me about that his roommate had gone into her home, had strangled her, and that he had put her body on, or he had taken his truck and put her body on Hudson property in Fitzgerald, and that he helped to destroy the body.
Who was it that you were told killed and strangled Tara Grinstead?
Ryan Duke.
Who was it that you were told actually put her body on Hudson Property Farms?
Ryan Duke.
Who was it that you were told helped burn the body?
Bo Dukes.
Okay. And when we say helped burn the body, was there more than one person other than Mr. Bo Dukes? Was anyone else involved with burning Tara Grinstead's body?
Ryan Duke.
Now we're hearing their Hudson Pecan Farm. Here's a map that really puts into perspective how close a lot of these scenes are that authorities believe what happened to Tara Grinstead. We went by her house today, which is just 2 minutes away from this courthouse, just around the corner, Vinnie. And when you look at the county that this is in, Irwin County, there's also a nearby county, Ben Hill County, where they believe that her body was then taken, that pecan grove that was owned by the family of Bo Dukes. It's only about a mile and a half away from here. They've never found her body. They did a search of that location. We only know the location of where the office is. We don't know how large that grove is or where Dukes may indicate that she was buried or where he helped conceal the body, but that is what we anticipate his testimony will be once the state calls him in front of this jury.
How small of a town is it down there? Give us an idea. You're on the streets of Ocilla today.
Pretty small town, Vinnie. 3,000 people is the population. We're about 30 minutes away from the next largest town where the hotels and restaurants would be. So that's Tifton, Georgia. That's somewhere where Tara Grinstead was doing some of her beauty pageantry, where she ran and went on to go for Miss Georgia in this area. But Ocilla, Georgia, small town. A lot of people know everybody, and this case was one that really shook them to their core, and they still talk about it to this day.
And what else can we expect from the hearing this week here on Court TV?
Long laundry list for the judge for this hearing. One of those being a Jackson Deno hearing that the defense wants. They want to challenge the validity of the confession by Ryan Duke to police, to the GBI. They say it was coerced, and they want that hearing to determine that, or for the judge to determine it. There's also a request for a Harper hearing that's going to deal with the DNA evidence in this case that was not linked to this defendant until much more recently. This was a 2005 disappearance of Tara Grinstead. They tested it then, didn't find certain evidence, but this true allele DNA testing system is something that is under scrutiny, will be talked about tomorrow. The motion to exclude expert witnesses, the defense, or rather the state says the defense wants to call witnesses who will talk about false testimony theory, going back to a possible coerced statement that they say was made to police. There's also a motion to exclude character evidence of Bo Dukes by the state, petition for a witness from out of state by the defense, and a motion to reveal all deals. So the defense wants to know what the state has offered Bo Dukes in exchange for his testimony. He doesn't have any charges pending here in Irwin County, but he does have some pending ones in some other counties, and they want to know on the record if he has been given immunity for his testimony.
Because he already went to trial and was found guilty by a jury, right, on the charges related to all this. Wow, a lot at stake this week down there in Ocilla. Julia Janae there for all of it. Thank you so much, Julia. Let's bring in our think tank tonight. Joining us in Fort Lauderdale, Florida criminal defense attorney, civil rights attorney, Casey Early. In Covington, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Brian Frost is with us. And in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Al Wunsch III. Good evening to everyone. Brian, I'm going to start with you. You're in Georgia. This is Ocilla, Georgia. We got Duke versus Dukes. You know, off the top, I said the big problem for a prosecution is who the witnesses are. What do you think is going to happen with Bo Dukes? I mean, he was already convicted for concealing the body at trial by a jury. Do they give him a deal on some other unrelated charges to testify here? How does all this going to work? What do you think how it's going to play out? I think his signal froze because Brian loves to talk. Casey, let me go to you. How do you think this is going to play out? Oh, is he back? Can you hear me? Brian? Nope. He's not. He's definitely not getting us.
I'll tell you.
I tried. Casey, so how do you think this is going to play out with Bo Dukes?
Well, it's not unusual that a defense witness, prosecution witness would grant an immunity in exchange for their testimony. So that's really not of concern. The prosecutor should stick to the jury instructions, and typically with the jury instructions.
But Casey, here's the problem. He didn't get a deal. He went to trial, and the jury found him guilty of concealing Tara Grinstead's body.
Not the deal with the current conviction, but any of his pending cases. That's not a big deal. The question would be, does his testimony match with the other testimony? We know that this is a circumstantial case. We don't have the body, but is his testimony consistent with all the evidence that the prosecution does have? Focus on that information. Is he straightforward in his testimony? Although he has been convicted, is there any bias in his testimony? So, you know, as you said earlier, you can't pick your witnesses in this case, but does his testimony shed light and will help the state to bear its burden beyond a reasonable doubt? And I said it would.
Al, this is Bo Dukes, not a great guy based upon charges and history. I mean, really not a great guy. How do you think this plays out? And what do you think is going on with this pretrial hearing, having him come in and testify ahead of time, trying to get to the bottom of I guess, whatever deal he may or may not have here?
Well, obviously, Vin, this Dukes would be a hazard for the prosecution, okay? Under the circumstances, it's always a problem to put somebody on like that. But he had a trial. He got up there. He was found guilty. He's got nothing to gain, and he's really got nothing to lose. What is the best they could possibly do for him? Maybe put him in a better prison or something along those lines? And if the story is corroborated as to what he has put forth with regards to his evidence, where's his incentive to lie? Where's his incentive to talk to his girlfriend about this, to talk to the
incentive to lie is probably going to be in the form of the defense pointing the finger at Bo Dukes as being the real killer and Ryan just being the guy who helped conceal it. I mean, they're going to try to flip this whole thing around.
And that would be an excellent way of doing it, is to get Duke versus Duke or Dukes versus Duke. But I don't think that they're going to see that. The prosecution has already put a trial on this. If they thought by any stretch of the imagination they had a full case against Dukes, okay, they would have got it. And let's look, the guy got 25 years. I mean, he certainly got hit pretty hard with regards to what he ultimately was convicted of. So I don't think I mean, the defense is going to have to do whatever they can, throw something against the wall to see if it sticks. But, you know, I don't think that Mr. Duke is going to be getting any benefit from the Dukes, despite the hazard.
I think we've got Brian Frost back. Join us in Covington, Georgia. Brian, great to see you. Let me ask you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
A jury down in Irwin County, down in that small town of Ocilla, what are they going to think about prosecutors using the testimony of somebody like Bo Dukes? Are they going to be skeptical? Are they going to accept it?
Well, you know, Vinnie, as it turns out, I actually clerked right out of law school in that area in the cordial circuit. This is a horrifying crime that occurred. This is not something that the folks down there are used to. I think that Ryan Dukes is he's going to have a tough time. I don't think they care where the truth comes from as long as they get it. And this Bo Dukes, in addition to Ryan Dukes, spontaneously, supposedly confessing, you getting 25 years for covering this up and helping to dispose of the body. I think Ryan Dukes is in for a lot worse.
All right, I just have to correct one thing, Brian. It's Ryan Duke and Bo Dukes.
I'm sorry.
No,
Yes,
but it's
I
crazy,
apologize.
right? It's unbelievable. They graduate class of 2002, right next to each other in the yearbook. All right, okay, see you early. Brian Frost, Al Wunsch with us the whole hour. When we come back, we're going to talk about Alec Baldwin, because why? Alec Baldwin talking again about his situation. Alec Baldwin, shot and killed Helena Hutchins. There's no way around it. He did. The gun was in his hand. No one's denying that. He had something to say about the people who were suing him. You'll hear what he had to say when we come back.
Santa Fe Fire and EMS, what's the location of the emergency?
Bonanza Creek Ranch has had 2 people accidentally shot on a movie set by a prop gun. We need help immediately. Okay. Bonanza Creek Ranch. Come on.
Stay on the phone with me. We're going to get some help, okay?
Okay.
What is your name?
Mamie Mitchell. It sounds like somebody else is calling for 2 ambulances. We better make good. Everybody should be. We need some help. Our director and our cameraman, this Kramer woman, has been shot.
That was one of the 911 calls from the set of Rust out in Santa Fe County, New Mexico. The shooting death of Helena Hutchins, shot and killed. She was one of the photographers, one of the camera people shooting that movie. She ends up getting shot while they were blocking a scene. Alec Baldwin, they said it was a prop gun, but let me just correct that. It was a gun, a real gun, being used as a prop. But a real gun's a real gun. The fact you're using it in a movie doesn't mean it's no longer a real gun. It's a real gun. It's not a prop gun. Prop gun is probably made out of plastic and is something that you can't put bullets in, that doesn't fire. You can't shoot blanks. You can't shoot dummy rounds. You can't shoot real bullets. This was a real gun. Now, from the beginning, I've been saying in this case, because we've been analyzing this case from a criminal perspective, because there's a criminal investigation. Should someone be held criminally responsible for what happened? Was the conduct either intentional or so reckless that it becomes criminal, that the conduct was so egregious that someone should be held criminally responsible? And while analyzing that, I always said, of course there's civil liability here. There's clearly negligence. Someone is shot and killed while filming a movie. Yeah, somebody is responsible for that. And you would think the person holding the gun would obviously be responsible. Maybe others as well. But at a minimum, you think it's a little bit negligent that you point a gun and you squeeze the trigger and a bullet comes out and you kill someone? Alec Baldwin doesn't necessarily agree with that. He spoke at the Boulder Film Festival. Listen closely to his words as he's addressing not the criminal investigation, which is still ongoing, but the civil lawsuit where the standards are so much lower. You don't have to prove this extreme recklessness, just negligence. Take a listen.
What you have is a certain group of people, litigants and on whatever side, who their attitude is, well, the people who likely seem negligent have no money. And the people who have money are not negligent. But we're not going to let that stop us from doing what we need to do in terms of litigation. So we have people that are suing people that they think are deep pockets litigants, where they're going to be able to, well, why sue people if you're not going to get money? That's what you're doing it for.
I can't believe he said that out loud. I really can't, for many reasons. Let me bring in the think tank. Maybe they agree, disagree with me. We still have with us Casey Early, Brian Frost, and Al Wunsch. Is there a world that we live in, Casey, where someone can be handling a gun, pointed at someone, squeeze the trigger, fire the gun, shoot and kill someone, and they're not negligent in what they're doing?
If you're not on a movie set. Listen, I agree with Alec Baldwin. He should not be criminally liable, nor should there be a civil case against him.
What?
He cannot be. No, he shouldn't. He can't be expected to be the actor, the handler, the security officer. This is why everyone has a job to do. His job was to be the actor. And there were so many other people in place prior to him receiving the gun. So what was the purpose of having the handler with the gun if he was also expected to do her job as well? We're putting too much burdens on actors. His job was to act, take the gun, and fire. It wasn't his job to check and double check and triple check. We're on the set of a movie. This is not everyday life where he was at a cafe and taking a drink and decided to pick up a gun. This was a movie. It wasn't his job. He should not be liable at all.
Al, what do you think?
Fiddle faddle on that. He's absolutely liable. I mean, it's part of the, even if you look at it from a standpoint of just negligence, Okay, a weapon is inherently dangerous. You don't point it at anyone. Okay, and in this instance, there was no scene going on that they needed to have that weapon pointed. He pointed it and he fired it. Okay, and he ended up killing someone. I don't necessarily agree that he should be criminally liable. I think that that's a little far-fetched. I mean, if you take a look at what happened with in the movie The Crow, okay, when a actor was killed there, okay, the person who shot him was not found criminally liable and they never pressed charges. But in this instance, civil liability, absolutely. And if I was representing, Alec Baldwin, I'd say, listen, yeah, Alec, I have 2 words of advice for you. Just 2 words. You follow them and you'll be fine. Shut up. Why do you feel the need to keep talking? He thinks he can convince anyone because he's played a lawyer so many times on these films, or that he's played the big guy or the tough guy or whatever. He is absolutely positively sinking himself. This is a man who called his 12-year-old daughter on the phone and left a phone message in which he called her a pig. Okay,
they've made up subsequently, though. They have made up, Al. Brian, let me ask you, Brian Frost. Let me ask you. I got to cut off Al once in a while. I just got to cut you off once a show. I cut you off, Al. That's the rule.
I do appreciate that.
All right, Brian. Casey makes a very interesting point, because there are a lot of people that believe exactly like she believes, that there's, because of where he was in that moment. Do you believe in the actor's exemption from negligence in handling a real gun?
No, not at all. The first thing that every 9-year-old that takes hunter safety course learns is you never, ever, ever point a loaded, unloaded, broken gun at anyone, ever. All throughout any training that you ever go through, it is make the gun clear and safe. And when you hand it off to somebody, they should do the exact same thing. And there was never an occasion that he needed to point it at a cinematographer. This was not a scene. That was as reckless and stupid as it could possibly ever have been. So is he negligent? Absolutely. The foreseeable risk was so high, it was unbelievable. Did I think he intended to do it? No. But was that one of the most foolish things I've ever? And then on top of it, I'd smack him as hard as I could for even thinking what he's thinking, let alone saying it out loud. If he's in the middle of this litigation, you have to be an idiot to even think something like that, let alone let it get out into the media.
Yeah, sometimes people with deep pockets can be negligent too. It's not mutually exclusive. All right. Casey, Brian, Al, staying with us. We've got some breaking news tonight out of the Supreme Court. The High Court has decided it will not take up the sexual assault case against comedian Bill Cosby. Prosecutors wanted the justices to hear the case because they wanted the Supreme Court to reinstate Cosby's conviction. This decision now leaves in place a decision by Pennsylvania's highest court that threw out Cosby's conviction and set him free from prison. Bill Cosby spent nearly 3 years in prison before his release, so he can continue to prepare for his comeback tour. I think he's actually going to try to go on tour and start doing comedy again, believe it or not. Okay, still ahead.
On the docket tonight, the Parkland school shooter preparing for trial in Florida. He has already admitted to murdering 17 people and attempting to murder 17 others. So the jury will only have one decision to make: life or death.
I believe it's your decision to decide where I go, whether I live or die. Not the jury's. I believe it's your decision. I'm sorry.
Plus, convicted sex offender and former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein caught in jail with contraband. Not a knife, not drugs, but milk duds. Tonight's 13th juror question: how do you think Weinstein smuggled the milk duds into his cell? Did he get help from the outside?
Jewelry with Worthy.com.
On the docket tonight, the Parkland school shooter. This case is coming up soon, and there was a moment a while ago where the whole trial seemed to go away. And that's because the Parkland school shooter admitted his guilt to 17 murders and 17 attempted murders. So coming up on the docket is the penalty phase of his trial. So a jury will have to decide life or death for the Parkland school shooter. Now, during that hearing, when he admitted his guilt, he made this very awkward statement at the hearing. I'm going to play that for you now. I want you to watch it and think about what the next phase of this case is all about, which will be whether or not he lives or dies. Take a look.
I am very sorry for what I did, and I have to live with it every day. And that if I were to get a second chance, I will do everything in my power to try to help others. And I am doing this for you, and I do not care if you do not believe me. And I love you, and I know you don't believe me, but I have to live with this every day. And it brings me nightmares, and I can't live with myself sometimes, but I try to push through because I know that's what you guys would want me to do. I hate drugs, and I believe this country would do better if everyone would stop smoking marijuana and doing all these drugs and causing racism and violence out in the streets. I'm sorry, and I can't even watch TV anymore. And I'm trying my best to maintain my composure, and I just want you to know I'm really sorry. And I hope you give me a chance to try to help others. If I believe it's your decision to decide where I go and whether I live or die. Not the jury's. I believe it's your decision. I'm sorry.
It was a bizarre moment. I didn't quite understand it, but there's going to be a trial now. Let's bring back in our think tank. I see you early, Brian Frost, Al Wunsch. Brian, your thoughts about a trial that is life or death. That's it. Jury doesn't have to decide if he did it because you already admitted to all of it. He pleaded guilty to the charges, the 17 murders, the 17 attempted murders, and that's the guy we just saw. That's the guy they've got to figure out life or death for him.
Yeah. Well, you know, he had to admit it if he's going to use the defense that he's used, which I believe is that he had multiple personalities or at least one other personality. And, you know, I don't know. I can't really comment on whether he sounds like he's very disturbed, which kind of makes me think there should have been people paying attention to that. How did this happen? How did he get a hold of the gun? If he just went in and bought one, then I think we've got real problems that need to be addressed. You know, as far as people like himself getting on it, but when he went off on the marijuana, I'm not sure where he was going, and helping people regardless of the outcome. I don't know who he's thinking he's going to be helping. Hopefully himself to stay alive where he's going.
Okay, see you early. This is your state, Florida. Okay? Yes. Death penalty is the law. It is the law. The worst of the worst. Does it get any worse than what he did?
It does not, but then you have to look at the mitigating circumstances. Now, I live less than 5 minutes away from Parkland. This entire community was shaken by what occurred. So even if he gets the jury of his peers, you're not going to set aside what occurred. But at the same time, is it sufficient mitigating circumstances that will sway the jury into giving him, let's say, a life sentence over a death sentence? And what he said may not have made sense to us, but those were his raw emotions. He wasn't reading off of a script. He was just saying how he felt. And clearly, he's not in the right state of mind. He was overlooked several times. He should have been flagged when he had several complaints, several police calls. He was failed by the system, didn't get the proper mental help. All of this information is, I'm pretty sure the public defender will utilize as mitigating circumstances to hopefully spare his life.
Al Wunsch, your thoughts about this case, because I believe the way the evidence is going to come out is when it comes down to motivation, which I think is going to be a big factor here for this jury. Why did he do what he did? I think he was a little angry that involving a potential love interest of his was not returning the same feelings. I think that was part of it. I think that the evidence may show that that was part of it. How important is the why of it at this trial when the jury has to decide life or death?
You know, I call this like the Leopold and Loeb lob, okay? Because what they did was they really cut off a lot of this trial by him coming up and admitting it. And even though he was a little disjointed with regards to his statement, I have to agree that, you know, he came across as being pathetic. He came across as being troubled. He came across as somebody who does not necessarily, is not in any way happy with what he's done. He is living with it. It is torturing him. It is going on him. And as I said, it's a Leopold and Loeb lob. It gives the jury something to think about. And giving him a life sentence is probably where they're going to go with this. If he had wanted a full-blown trial, all this came out, he defiantly put these people through all of this pain, I think the jury's going to be looking at it from a different light. But he cut that off, a smart move on his attorney's part, and I think it's going to deliver a life verdict.
Casey, give us a little more insight from, do you think that going in to all of this, you know, if you had to say which is the more likely outcome, that the folks down there in Florida are going to cut him the break?
Well, again, this was very traumatic for our community here at Broward County. And just being in the courthouse, and I was actually there on the day that he took the plea, and just to see the sentiments of the family, they were very emotional. So you have to think about the victim impact statements. Will the victim impact statement supersede his emotions and supersede whether or not he received sufficient help? And on that day, he was able to execute 17 lives and then casually walk to the store, and he didn't surrender there at the scene. So they're going to take all of this into account. The emotions are still raw even after several years have passed. And then I passed the building. It's still up. It won't be demolished until the sentencing phase is completed. So the emotions are there. And because the amount of lives, they may not spare his life in this case. It depends.
Yeah, it's going to be such a difficult case for everyone in that courthouse, and there's going to be dozens and dozens and dozens of people, the students who were there, the families. It's unreal, but you'll see it on Court TV. Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk about convicted felon, sex offender. His name's Harvey Weinstein. Got caught with some contraband behind bars. We'll let you know exactly what it is, and then ask you, how do you think he smuggled it into his cell? That's next.
369.
All right, Harvey Weinstein in California. There you go. Unbelievable. But he's been caught with some contraband and is in a little bit of trouble. And it really makes you wonder, how could someone in such a bad physical state smuggle contraband into the jail? And it wasn't a knife, wasn't a shiv, wasn't any of that. It was milk duds. Still a lot of questions tonight, though. The first question is, how did he get these duds in there? Was it a box of duds? Was it just, you know, a few loose duds, maybe? I just don't know. That part of the story we don't know. But the guards were concerned because it was shortly after a meeting with one of his attorneys that they found some of these duds. And Harvey Weinstein has released a statement about the duds because the guards are very concerned. He said, "This was an innocent misunderstanding. It will not happen again. I've been a model inmate following the rules and regulations, and I am sorry." He is denying, as well are his attorneys denying, that they had anything to do with the duds. And he did have a story about the duds, which was that he brought them from New York out to California with him when he was extradited. But that was in July. The duds were found like in November or so. Really? Harvey Weinstein's not going to eat the whole box of duds between July and like November? That's his story. He's sticking to it. Posted on social media. How did he get them in? Did he get help from the outside? Comment of the day comes from Derek. The guard passed them to him. That's how 90% of stuff gets into prison. Brian Frost, let me ask you, do you agree that 90% of contraband that inmates have come from the guards?
I don't know the exact percentages, but what I've been told from some of my clients is, and it makes perfect sense, that the guards are responsible. And quite frankly, if the guards weren't in on it, you're not getting anything inside those prisons if they were doing what they're supposed to. And maybe it's they turn a blind eye. Maybe they're directly involved. But there right now, we have an epidemic of drugs, low-cost drugs. It used to be they were expensive in jail. Now, they're almost cheaper than they are on the street. I've got clients that call me from cell.
And I think we're losing Brian again. Al, I'm afraid to go to Al Wunsch on this one. Let me post what Willie said. Willie said his attorney gave it to him. And again, the attorney has denied it, and Harvey Weinstein has denied that as well. Al Wunsch, I will go to you, though. That would be awfully dangerous, right? Attorneys would never get involved in bringing anything that they're, even if their client's paying them a gazillion dollars, you get in too much trouble, you're not going there.
And let's face it. I mean, I don't know how he got them in, how he smuggled them in or whatever. I do know I would never have wanted to have one that if he offered it to me. It's got to be pretty gross. But under the circumstances, for a lawyer to do that would be insane. It would be a very dangerous move. It would be foolish, and it would. I can't imagine anything like that happens. It's a harmless thing. It's milk duds. It's an iconic candy of our youth, Ben. An iconic candy. Came around in 1928. It's
and it's fine, but it's not a junior mint. That's all I'm saying. Casey Early. Casey Early, your thoughts about the milk duds and how he would have gotten them in? Are you buying his story that he when he's extradited, he brought them with him from New York?
Not at all. First of all, he's not going to snitch on his supplier, because this man with his sweet tooth, he has a sweet tooth craving. He's going to want more. It's an inside operation. It's an inside job. And I would bet it's either the guards or inmates before it's the attorney.
All right. Has anyone had a milk dud this year?
I have.
Not at all.
Well,
I'm a Snickers
I
girl.
had Halloween.
All right.
I had Halloween.
I've got a box here. If you want to join me later. All right, great job. Casey Early, Brian Frost, Al Wunsch. Great to have you on the show, your insight, your experience. We appreciate it. We'll see you again real soon. When we come back, folks, a story out of Florida. A woman disappears. Where did she go? They found her in her backyard, in her own septic tank. Details from the sheriff when we come back.
In tonight's unsolved case file in Flora, Indiana, 4 young sisters die in a fire. Their mom survives and investigators suspect arson. Why would anyone want to take the lives of these children? Tonight, we ask for your help in finding answers for a grieving mother.
If you know the truth, tell it.
In San Diego, California, officers opened fire on a suspect with his hands in his pockets. We break down the video with our own law enforcement experts.
Hey, you good?
And in Clarksville, Tennessee, a man is accused of using Apple AirTags to stalk and track his estranged wife. We'll take a closer look during Crime Time.
You know, when we're talking about fleeing for your life, you know, minutes matter.
Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And we've got a lot of stories to get to this hour, but I want to begin with a story out of Martin County, Florida. A woman goes missing. They find her, and she's discovered in her backyard in her own septic tank. This is really a tragic story on many different levels, involves a lot of challenges. WPTV, our great affiliate down in Florida, and John Shaman, reporter, has more details for us tonight as we try to unravel what happened.
Lisa Steiger places a bouquet in front of a sign she left by her neighbor's garage off Skyline Drive in Jensen Beach.
Because I wanted to show my presence of, you know, how much she meant to us in the neighborhood.
The body of that neighbor, 57-year-old Cynthia Cole, was found by investigators in her septic tank Saturday. She'd been missing since February 24th.
She would have loved the flowers and the butterflies. That's how she was. She was just very earthly, down to earth.
A handyman who did yard work for Cole, 34-year-old Keoki Demich, was arrested and charged with her murder.
By his own admission and by witness testimony and other information we have, he was at the house. And based on cumulative evidence, it does appear that she was probably killed soon after getting home.
The sheriff says although Demich was listed as a sex offender in Washington state from an arrest as a teen, he didn't have that designation in Florida because of a change in the law and had been friendly with the victim for years.
He was not on our radar.
An autopsy is yet to be completed, but Cole suffered a number of trauma injuries.
They had a monster machine digging that hole.
Detectives who had stopped by the home last Friday noticed a sewer pipe in the backyard that had a number of screws loose from the cover. An initial check spotted the body, and that led to the weekend excavation.
It just breaks my heart what happened to her. And it's just disrespectful, and just, I can't believe that somebody would harm her in the way that they did.
Demich is being held in jail tonight on a $750,000 bond. In Martin County, John Shaman, WPTV, News Channel 5.
A lot of questions tonight on this one. Let's bring in a special guest joining us now by phone in Martin County, Florida, is the sheriff from Martin County, William Snyder. Sheriff, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
Let's begin here. What led you to the septic tank? How did investigators end up in the backyard there?
Well, it was our second time going to the house. And, you know, initially it was a missing person call. It was an adult. We didn't see anything suspicious at the home other than the fact that some things that she would normally have taken with her, her wallet, credit cards, were still there. So we were very suspicious. On the second time going back, one of my detectives was extremely alert, looked down at the cover of the septic tank. It's big enough to put a body in it. And he noticed that the bolts on that, what we call a riser here in South Florida, looked like the dirt had been moved away from the bolts. And he just kneeled down, unbolted it, pulled that cover off, and unfortunately discovered her body in the septic tank.
All right, let's talk about processing that scene and trying to get her body out. What are some of the challenges? I can't imagine. Have you ever been to a scene like this before?
No, I'm in about my 45th year doing that. I was a Miami cop in Dade County for 20 years. And none of us in our sheriff's office had ever seen it. We'd never heard of it. And so it really was a Herculean task. We had an open septic tank, human remains, and we had to get heavy equipment. We had to actually take the fence apart to get back there, take out trees, hedges, and then excavate as much as we could with the heavy equipment and the backhoe. And then we had to dig the rest by hand and then carefully pull that cement cover. I don't know, say it's 4 by 6, very heavy, pull it away, not letting it slam back down into the water and destroy the physical evidence that we were hoping to get from the body. And then in raw sewage, get equipment in there to get the body out, all the while trying to preserve evidence and keep my detectives from falling into that raw sewage. We actually had to tie ropes around their waists. And, yeah, it was a Herculean task.
Amazing. Now, what led you from investigating the septic tank and discovering her body to then tracking down this handyman?
Well, the handyman, Keoki Demich, was on our radar really almost from the day we got the missing person report, because he was known to go over there. She was a single female. He had been seen over the years coming and going and helping her. And so we went to talk to him. You know, a homicide or a missing person investigation, thinking it might be a homicide, you have to eliminate everybody who would have had contact with the victim. And when we interviewed him to eliminate him from suspicion, it just was clear, really from the very beginning, that he was hiding something. And so just, I don't think you have time on the show to get into all the nuances of it, but he was lying from the very beginning. It was easy to see that he was lying. So we conducted around-the-clock surveillance and ultimately put him at the scene and then driving away with her car.
So, again, amazing work by you all, that so quickly you can recognize someone is being deceptive and is on your radar. Have you been able to put together a timeline of when all this happened and perhaps what motivated it?
Well, it's two big questions. The timeline really is not that complex. She was at an event in downtown Jensen Beach here in Martin County, a kind of a middle-class neighborhood. She was with some friends, not drinking, nothing going on unusual, and she went home. Well, over the next, I don't have the report in front of me, 5 or 6 days, they never heard from her again. She failed to make some appointments. And so the timeline looked like, well, it looks like now with follow-up and evidence from cell phones and video camera surveillances we've got from cooperating witnesses, neighborhood, it looks like she went from the restaurant to home. He was already there. He puts himself there. He admits that he was there. You know, we have evidence that he drove the car away. He admits driving the car away. So the timeline's pretty tight. It looks like she gets home at 7:30, and he's gone in her car by 8 o'clock.
And the why of it, because you mentioned that he had been there for years. Why at this moment do you believe that he would take her life?
Look, one of the hardest things for us as investigators is always to determine motive. Sometimes motive is easy. You know, there's missing money, there's ransacking, there's obvious signs of a sexual battery. In this case, we can't tell if anything's missing from the house. She can't tell us. He's not cooperating. Our sense is, and I want to be careful because some of this is not ready to be released yet, but there is some significant indicators that there was probably a sexual battery and most likely also a robbery. What triggers him that night to go to her house, takes an Uber or a Lyft and goes there, waits for her, ambushes her in the house. You know, why that day, why that night, why that time? We may never know. He's not telling us.
And finally, Sheriff, and we really appreciate your time tonight. I know it's been a long, long day for you guys, and it's been a lot of work in putting this case together so well. As you look at this defendant now, this handyman, Demich, does he have any history?
He has almost no history. He was arrested for a burglary as a juvenile. He became a registered sex offender as a result of that. He watched some pornography at the victim's home and in the state, in Washington State where he was from, that qualified him as an offender. He was not qualified as an offender here in Florida. So yeah, his criminal past is negligible. He was friendly with the victim. She trusted him. Sometimes things are just inexplicable, and there are some questions we can't answer, and maybe we'll never answer.
Well, Sheriff William Snyder down in Martin County, Florida, again, thank you for your time tonight and great work by your team down there in solving this case and solving it so quickly. We appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. Y'all have a great evening.
Okay, let's bring in our investigators joining us tonight. In Atlanta, Georgia, former special agent in charge at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Trebor Randall, and in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator Jason Jensen, who is joining us tonight in lieu of celebrating his own birthday. So happy birthday from everyone, Jason. We appreciate you coming on tonight. Let's get to work here, though. This scene, Jason, the sheriff seemed to indicate there might be some evidence of a sexual battery and robbery here. We know what that scene was like, where the victim was recovered, Cynthia Cole. Your thoughts about what type of evidence they may have or may need to prove that part of the case?
Well, it sounds like they found a mostly intact cadaver in the septic tank. So the ME is going to have a lot to work with to either determine that there was blunt force involved in subduing her, or maybe she was strangled. But yeah, there's a lot here that it's amazing that they solved this case so quickly, because with the evidence of Demich leaving the scene in the Jeep, it's entirely possible they could have assumed the worst, that he took the victim away from the home and not even explore the backyard the way they did. So it's a good thing that this deputy had a keen eye and noticed such a little detail like the dirt swept away from the screws of the manhole cover, because otherwise they could have overlooked this tremendous tip.
It's unbelievable. Trebor, like that moment, I'm thinking this is like a scene from one of these cop shows that I've been reared on for years, where the lead character is the only one who can spot this little tiny thing. And it was a little tiny thing. There was some dirt that was brushed off of the bolts from the lid to this riser that connected to the septic tank. To me, that is absolutely amazing that the deputy spotted that and put two and two together so quickly.
Absolutely. And happy birthday, by the way, Jason, as well. But I mean, I love it. We call this good old-fashioned cop work, investigative work. And you all call it a little detail. I call it a big detail. We look for things like that. Our forensic folks, that's what they're trained to do. An area of dirt that's been disturbed, that ordinarily, unless somebody's been working on your septic tank, that dust or that dirt would not have been moved away necessarily, right? And I can recall many scenes that we've had like this where it appeared to be something, like you said, out of a movie, where we've had a body that's been put down into a well. We've had a body that's been put in a septic tank in different places, in a landfill, and it's like finding a needle in a haystack. But I really love the fact that there was an astute detective that said, hey, this looks unusual, because when you're looking for someone or you're looking for evidence of a crime, you don't look past anything. Also, I just love the way they work. They used the big tools, then they went down to their hands. By them dealing with a septic tank and waste and all, the only thing that's missing that we would have done would have been the Tyvek suits. So definitely want them to be careful. We've learned from our mistakes with that, digging around in landfills, and then, investigators are exposed to different elements, and it's not unusual for somebody to catch a rash or start itching the next day. But I love work here. We've done this several times, and it's very tedious, as the sheriff mentioned, and you have to be really careful when you get all the heavy stuff out of the way and you get down to the actual body or the main evidence. And some cases, we're using toothbrushes if we're unearthing someone in dirt, but you have to be very careful to preserve all that evidence, as he mentioned. But great work for those guys involved.
It absolutely was. Jason Jensen, the other part of this investigation that the sheriff told us about, which was Well, we knew this handyman was hanging around, so we talked to him. And again, it's that gut feeling. When you talk to someone, they listen, wait a minute, something's going on with this guy. And then they started the surveillance.
Exactly. And I think what led them to that is the fact that Cindy had friends, her neighbor, in fact. And so the neighbor was aware that Cindy had work being done to her home. So the question is, maybe the handyman saw something, or is the work unfinished? That would be a tremendous lead. It's like, why did you stop working? When's the last time you saw Cindy? So I'm sure it started there and it got broader from there.
And Shabor, the other tragedy here is you have Cynthia Cole. She's living by herself. She needs stuff fixed around the house. And she's got someone, this wasn't like the first time he'd ever met her. And you would think probably through the years there was a level of trust that was built between him and her, and to have that trust broken, and for this to happen, to me, is the other part of this story and this tragedy.
You're right, Vinnie. One of the first things that I tell women, especially women who live alone, if they're going to be looking for to hire, whether it's a handyman, a contractor for services, someone that's going to be around your home and you live alone, that person is going to know that. They're going to know that you don't have a husband around, or a roommate for that matter, people living in the house with you. He knew she lived alone, and we know that he did have somewhat of a past. So you always want to be very careful and check a background. Go through the services that do provide background checks for these individuals that are going to come into your home. It sounds like she didn't have any reason not to trust him. He had been around. I'm very concerned about the fact that he was registered in another state. Even though it didn't meet the criteria for Florida, it tells me that he has a past. As the sheriff mentioned, we always want to try to get to the why. Sometimes that's not evident, and if they're not cooperating, we may not get that. But the first thing, when I heard that he was a sex offender, one thing I know about someone who exhibits sexually deviant behavior is that they don't ever get past that. It's going to rear its ugly head at some point. And we don't know if he had made advances towards her, they were rejected. That's the first thing that my mind went to. We've seen this over and over, where that person who is a sex offender has some type of history in the past, has been watching this person, maybe fantasizing about her, and just decided to make that advancement, and she rejects him. And the next thing you know, we're working a homicide investigation. The fact that he takes the car and steals some items, I think that was more after the fact.
Really sad. We're going to continue to track this case, because now it looks like it'll be moving towards a trial, and we'll keep you up to date with all the latest. When we come back, Trebor, Jason staying with us. We're going to talk about the Flora Four. 4 young sisters who perish in a fire. Their mom is absolutely heartbroken, still looking for answers. It is suspected arson. What happened? That story. It is time to open up tonight's unsolved case file. This is where we're asking for your help. If you have any information, please pick up the phone tonight, make the call, make the difference, help investigators, but more importantly, help a family looking for justice. Tonight's story comes to us from our great affiliate, WRTV in Indianapolis. It's a story out of Flora, Indiana. Rafael Sanchez has the story of 4 young sisters who die in a fire.
This is more than a blanket. It's truly a comforter for a mother still mourning.
It keeps me calm. It keeps me, mellow, like my babies are here with me.
This gift captures the happy days with Kiana, Kiara, Cariel, and Keone, nicknamed Peedle. The 4 girls died in a fatal fire in Flora in November 2016. We FaceTimed with the girls' mother, now living in California, during her lunch break.
I want everyone to know the love that we had for each other. It was the most wonderfulest love. I mean, it was everlasting.
She tries to keep busy with multiple jobs, but her mind, she says, never strays from the house where she lost so much.
With Cariel, I just loved her feistiness. I loved the way she clung to me and she smiled and always wanted you to smile and be happy. Peedle was more of my shy, quiet baby. You would have to ask me for whatever she needed because she wouldn't say nothing. Kiara was my quiet baby. I just loved the way she just was a laid-back girl. Grab a book, grab a show or a movie, and she's quiet and she's content. Kiana was my adventure girlfriend. She wanted to go around the world if I let her. I love that she wanted to do and be something in her life.
The sisters who lived in Flora loved to cheer. In this video, the eldest sister, Kiana, helps her 7-year-old sister, Cariel, work on their routine before a competition.
So I always watch them do their routines on the front porch and tell them, oh, you got it. But they worked hard at it. They loved it.
Let's record it. Get ready for another part.
And Jackie lives in Delphi. The girls loved splashing in her pool and never missed a bowl of her spaghetti.
They loved me. I love them. They knew if they needed anything or if they wanted me to do something, they knew I was right there for them and their mom. So it's tough.
This has been devastating for the girls' family across the country. Aunt Leslie is from California, and she prays sharing more about the girls will encourage more tips.
To a person that might know something, first of all, look at the news and look at these 4 babies and do the right thing. Just do the right thing.
The investigation into who killed the 4 girls here at the intersection of Columbia and Division remains unsolved. And state police say that this is not a cold case because they believe someone will say something.
I just want y'all to come clean and just say something. It was just me and my girls in that house. I was a single mother of 4 children. And all I want is peace. I want some type of justice or peace for my children. That's all I ask.
Someone knows something. Here's the phone number. Pick up the phone, make the call tonight. 1-800-382-4628. It's the Arson hotline. 1-800-382-4628. Please make that call tonight. Still with us, former special agent in charge from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Trebor Randall, private investigator Jason Jensen, and joining us now by phone, a special guest in San Jose, California, the mother of Kiana, Kiara, Cariel, and Kiani, Galen Rose is with us. Galen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it's always difficult, but we appreciate it. How are you holding
very
up?
welcome.
How are you holding up tonight?
I'm all right today.
Okay.
I take it day by day, as per usual, as I would say. But I'm okay today. I'm all right today. How are y'all doing?
Good.
How you doing?
I'm good, and I'm glad to hear that tonight, Galen, because this story breaks everyone's hearts here at Court TV and the viewers across the country every time we do it.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything new from investigators? Any leads, any tips, any movement in this investigation?
I haven't, and so forth. From the other side, I haven't heard anything, no. But I'm just going to stick it at that. I don't communicate with the other side. No, I have not. At this point, I'm not going to get any answers from them. So I'm just going to do the best that I can, as the best of my knowledge, and do as a strong mother would do, and fight and do what I have to do and not depend on them. So no, I have not.
What can you tell us about that day? Was there anything unusual about that day? And what can you tell us about what happened here?
As far as I can tell you is what happened, being in that house, it totally changed. It just totally went left in my life that I would never expect to happen. It just went left. I don't know. As the house caught on fire and all that, it just went different in my life. And ever since November the 21st, 2016, my life will not be the same. It'll be the same in a way of I have to make toll and do what I have to do, but it will never be the same. It's just different. It hit different in my heart. Is all I can tell you.
Was there, in the days leading up to that day, did you see anyone? Did you interact with anyone that acted in a strange way? Was there anything that you can think back to that was out of the norm?
No. Never out of the norm did it feel like I was uncomfortable in that town. No, absolutely not. Everything went along as cordial as it went. I've never felt uncomfortable, and if I did feel uncomfortable in any certain way, I would have let my family know something. I was not a person to hide something from you and go behind the curtains and be sneaky and all this and that. No, I have a really big mouth. So, of course, my family and my friends would have known something out of the ordinary with me. So, no. My answer is no to that question. It was normal in that town.
I have a couple of guests with us as well, Galen. I want to bring Trebor Randall into the conversation. Trebor, arson cases are notoriously difficult. What are your thoughts about solving this? Do you think it comes from any forensic evidence, or do you think it comes from someone knows something and they're not talking yet?
Well, most investigations will tell you that eventually, the person will talk. They're going to mention something happening to someone, whether it be, in a way that they're bragging about, or that they eventually feel some type of remorse for what they've done. Listening to the mother, my heart goes out to you. For the last 7 years, I've dealt with parents who lost their children to heinous crimes and various other causes, but at one time, it's just unimaginable. But anything from this being a mistaken identity type of situation where someone targeted her home and thinking that they were targeting someone else, that has occurred in the past. My mind went to an investigation we worked where it was a double homicide, an elderly couple whose house was set on fire. And the only way we solved that case is the individual that ran from the scene jumped over a fence. And it wasn't until many weeks later that it was discovered that there was DNA on that fence. So I don't know what all forensic evidence they were able to collect, but we take the dirt from around the house. I hope that they're just waiting to get someone to bring in for questioning and maybe do a search warrant for their hair, their DNA, things of that nature that they could possibly match it up to. We've been successful with that in the past. And then ultimately, like we're mentioning, keeping these cases in the media, that someone might eventually talk and say something.
Jason Jensen, private investigator, your thoughts about this case and trying to get an answer for Galen.
Galen, yeah, our heart goes out to you. We want to help. So I have a couple key questions that I want to share with you. Maybe you can ask of the authorities to see if you can get a little bit clarity of what happened there. I mean, when there's an arson fire, there's usually a point of origin where the fire was started, and there was some type of propellant used, some kind of accelerant. So was there one place the fire was started, multiple places, inside the house, or outside? All that will make a big difference, because then you know if someone was targeting the house or targeting the occupants. We're talking 4 little children here. Why would somebody want to kill the kids? Maybe they thought the home was vacant, and you're talking to some teenagers that were playing with fire outside the home, because that would be an act of arson. So the question is whether or not somebody intended to harm the people inside. Those are the people that are more likely to talk if it was an accident, and there's only 2,000 people in town. So somebody would know something if there's a firebug that lives among you.
That part. Yes, I truly understand.
Galen, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to continue to profile this case until you get the answer and the justice that you and your 4 little angels deserve. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Trebor Randall, Jason Jensen, thanks again for your time and your expertise. We appreciate it. Still ahead.
In San Diego, California, officers open fire on a suspect with his hands in his pockets. We break down the video with our own law enforcement experts.
Hey, you good?
And in Clarksville, Tennessee, a man is accused of using Apple AirTags to stalk and track his estranged wife. We'll take a closer look during Crime Time.
When we're talking about fleeing for your life, minutes matter.
It is crime time here on Closing Arguments. Let's bring in tonight's guests. Joining me, former police officer Joe Stead. Joe is also a former sheriff's deputy, police investigator, and has served in Afghanistan as a police advisor. He's the author of the book Police Brutality Matters and the host of the Police Brutality Matters show on YouTube. Great to see you. Also with us tonight, former senior special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration and the founder and CEO of the Global Security Group, David Katz. David was an instructor at the DEA FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, where he taught firearms tactics to thousands of federal agents, state and local police officers, SWAT teams, and specialized military units. He's a corporate security expert and is particularly well known for his active shooter prevention and response programs, and is also the author of The Executive's Guide to Personal Security. Welcome, David. Great to see you as well. First video footage we have tonight is from San Diego, from the police department out there, where officers end up shooting a suspect who reaches into his pocket.
San Diego Emergency, 8901.
Yes, I was just robbed right now. I'm at Mullins Market.
Okay, stand in line with me. How were you robbed?
The guy came in and had a big knife right here. He's walking down the back alley.
This is Mullins Liquor.
Hey, don't reach for nothing. Don't reach for nothing. Get on the ground! Get back. Back up, back up. Back up, back up, back up. Back up. Hey, homie, you good? Hey, you good? I think I'm shot. Hey, hey. Shots fired, all audience. Back up, back up, back up. No officers down. No officers down. No officers hit. I'm coming up on your left, bro. On your left. On your left.
While he's working on him, let's check the box, make sure he doesn't grab anything else.
MPD 55. Let's start medics. Roll them in now.
All right. How do officers decide the exact moment to shoot? What about this situation? How was it approached by San Diego? Let's bring back in Joe Stead, David Katz. Joe, your thoughts?
Dave, good to see you back. Vinnie, this was a mess. When we start talking about when the officer decides to shoot, he has to have certain elements. One, he has to perceive that his life or the life of someone else is at risk of being lost at that moment, and there's no other options but to use deadly force to actually save that life. Now, how these officers handle it tactfully, it was a mess. You receive a radio call of an armed subject. You get out the car, Officer A being driver, Officer B being passenger. You approach tactfully, slow, methodically. Now, you start reading body language. They realized that they couldn't see the subject's hands, which is very important to the officers because you're trained to look at the subject's hands, let you see your hands. And then once they realized the subject had what they perceived to be a firearm, Officer A went back to his vehicle. You make yourself a smaller target, then you can use deadly force. You're a lot harder to hit. Officer B, he seemed like he went forward. He made himself a bigger target. He got kind of in trouble. He fell. The other officer was yelling to get back to the vehicle. At the same time, the assisting officers to the right, they started approaching on the right side, and it was coming so close to the lane of fire of Officer A and Officer B. So tactfully, these guys was horrible, except Officer A, who was the driver. He did everything that he was trained to do. These other guys, I think we need to do some retraining with these guys.
David Katz, your thoughts about this scene?
Yeah, that was a train wreck. Okay, so by the way, did you notice they have a shield there?
and the shield's in the back of the line. I mean, what planet does that make any sense? So, I agree with Joe, as I usually do. In this case, I don't even know why they got out from behind the car in the first place. He's walking toward them. Stay behind cover, give the commands, and then you make an assessment. Is the person listening to the arrest commands or not? In this case, he was not listening to the arrest commands, and he reached into his pocket. Now, I guess it's an airsoft gun. Well, you don't know that, and a knife. Well, I mean, there's no question here that deadly force as implemented was appropriate. But the putting yourself out like that, why? And and again, the tactics, lack of communication. You got to go back and start trading this on a daily basis, or at least a regular basis.
All right, Joe Stead, David Katz, staying with us, our experts. We've got more Crime Time straight ahead.
ra.com/crypto.
Welcome back to our Crime Time segment. Still with us, Joe Ested and David Katz. Next story comes to us from our affiliate WTVF in Nashville, Tennessee. Alexandra Cohn, the reporter. Apple AirTags used to track a woman.
Apple AirTags are used to track household items during a move. A lot of people attach them to keys. If you lose them, you can use your phone to find them. Unfortunately, these devices are now being used to track people. Megan Setter at the Clarksville Area Urban Ministry Safe House says it's a major problem.
We're starting to see an increase in more technology abuse tactics used against the clients that we're serving here.
On February 23rd, a woman received a notification on her phone that an AirTag was in her vicinity. After she found it in her child's car seat, she called police. A Clarksville officer arrested Benjamin Kern for stalking. According to the warrant, the victim has a military protective order against him.
So initially when this is going on, it could take up to 3 days for anyone to get a notification that, hey, this might be, following you. They've worked to get that down to a couple hours, but it's still, that's, when we're talking about fleeing for your life, minutes matter.
Megan fears it could bring an abuser to their front door.
What we're looking at is investing in, there's a lot of Bluetooth detection technologies.
To get AirTag alerts, make sure your Find My app has safety alerts on.
I was curious how it works, so I actually borrowed my coworker's AirTag and brought it with me from Nashville to Clarksville, and the alert is not instantaneous.
If you don't have an iPhone, download the Tracker Detect app.
It's not just the AirTags too, there's other technology, and when we're talking about being close to a military installation, you have service members that do have that technical training and expertise.
All right, what should you do if you're being tracked, or how do you figure out if you're being tracked, and what do you do about all this that phrase really caught me, David Kaz, which is the technology abuse, because the technology these days always ends up in the hands of the bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, anything, you could think about it. Something that'll help you find your keys or lost remote is now easily usable to put someone in jeopardy. In this case, we had a woman who was the subject of a protective order. It's the last thing you want to do. So I think and there are a bunch of detection apps that'll alert you a lot more quickly than Apple. I think a lot of pressure needs to be brought on these companies like Apple that there's no the alert can't take days, can't take hours. It should be virtually instantaneous, and then you can scan it and look. Oh, is the Bluetooth that it's hooked up to? Is it mine, or is it someone I don't recognize? If it does someone you don't recognize, disable it and contact law enforcement.
Absolutely, Joe Ested, your thoughts about this technology abuse that's taking place?
Yeah, it's a curse and a blessing all at one time. She notified law enforcement right away as soon as she realized or she felt that she was actually being tracked. So that's probably one of the main things you want to do, get law enforcement involved. They have the technology to track these things. I know with my iPhone, I can open up and see if there's an AirTag around in my vehicle, because I've seen that this is becoming more common than not. This is like the latest thing that criminals are using to track people. So yes.
Another thing to keep our eyes on.
Notify. Mm-hmm.
Let's go to our last video before we run out of time tonight, guys, because we looked at that first video from San Diego. I want to show you Volusia County Sheriff's Office taking down this suspected drug dealer. Your thoughts? Is this a better way to make an arrest, what we're seeing here, David Katz? And if we could drop those little letters there so we could see everything, folks. Thanks. Your thoughts, David?
Absolutely. That's just textbook. I mean, I will say that you have in this case, you have a compliant suspect. I don't say these my guys. No, I can't say if they're task force guys or not. But I will tell you this: that's just textbook stuff. And maybe you don't need that many people swarming in the arrest. But when a subject in this case, sees an overwhelming show of force, they're so much more likely to surrender rather than try to fight, or even flee. So look at that great approach, nice and quiet. You didn't hear any screeching tires. They rolled up slowly. Looks like you have a little crossfire there. So I would say that's the guy there on the left needed to not be in the picture. But other than that, I can't. It turned out well.
All right, we're out of time for tonight, but really appreciate it. Joe Ested, David Katz. We'll see you again real soon. Thank you.
Thank you. So long, guys.
Take care.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to take a look at a child who is not home, who should be home. We're going to ask again for your help tonight in locating this child. We'll be back.